Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of the best aquarium podcast on the planet. Not just the planet, not just the universe, but even the multiverse, Jason. It's everywhere. We're all over the place. Very excited about today's topic. But to tell you what today's topic is, I'm going to hand it over to the guy whose idea it was to talk about this. Jason, what's the topic for the day?
We are talking about the best aquarium size, maybe sizes, for most people. So I think our goal here is to try to keep it realistic, right? We're not going to be spouting off, oh man, you got to have the 300 gallon. If you don't have the 300 gallon, you're just not a serious fish keeper. So we're not going there. We're going to be looking at sizes that I think most people can find readily available type stuff.
Yeah, and I didn't want to say we are going to, at the end, we're going to reveal what we believe is the best size for everyone. I want to do that, but I also understand that everyone's situations are different. Their budgets are different. Their space is different. The kind of fish that they want to keep is different. So there really isn't, I know it's a cop-out, but there really isn't a final answer. This is the best. However, I do at the end, Jason, I want each of us, and I want to go first because I don't want you to steal my thunder on this one. I want to give if somebody came to us and said, okay, what should I do? I want to give what I believe is the perfect tank for everyone. But you got to stay tuned to the end for that because we got to keep it a surprise. But and then there's also, I got a good story to tell at the end of the episode for John's World today, and maybe Jason has something too. I don't know. We already talked about my story, so I don't know what you have. It's not that I don't care about what's going on in Jason's life. It's just a big deal for me, and you'll understand if you stay tuned and hear the end of that. If you care about things that are going on in my world that are not having to do with fish keeping, but are animal keeping. Big change in Lisa and I's life. But what is the best aquarium size? I mean, it has to be started out with, it is going to be a different answer for everybody. But I think the easiest way to do something like this is to talk about what can be done with different sizes, why somebody would go with one size versus the other. And then again, at the end, culminating with our recommendations of what we think are the best. So what, to you, Jason, the professor, what is the number one not number one, but what are the things that people need to think about when they're entertaining what size aquarium to get?
Experience level. So I think our answer is going to be very different if you are an absolute beginner compared to if you've been keeping fish for a while. Where are you putting this aquarium? What kind of space do you have? I mean, that is absolutely critical. Is it going to be on a piece of furniture? Are you going to have a stand? How much wall space do you have? How much time do you have? Can you dedicate time to maintaining the aquarium? Are you going to be overwhelmed with larger volumes of water? Are you small in stature where taller tanks might be more intimidating for you? And of course, what types of fish do you want to keep? Because that is going to have probably one of the number one impacts is the interest levels that you have in certain types of fish are going to absolutely determine your tank size. So there's a lot of different things that go into this. I'm sure I've left out a number of key aspects, but those are some of the big ones.
Well, you left out one that applies to where I live a lot. Not only my own personal home, but also a home style that's very popular around me, which you probably don't see in the Chicagoland area. But I'm talking about we have to check out and be aware of what this is going to be sitting on. And that needs to be one of the very first things that we need to think about because, and I mean the floor, I'm not talking about the stand, because I live in a house that was built in 1830. The room that I'm sitting in right here was built in 1860. These walls, this fireplace mantle, which is fake, was put up in 1860. This was not meant to hold big weight. I'm 230 pounds. I can walk through this room and you can feel me walking through this room. I mean, it moves a little bit. It's not like pictures fall off the walls, but it's, you know, this floor is not meant to hold something huge. But the reason why I talked about the area I live in rural North Carolina. There are a lot of mobile homes around me. These are nice homes. Directly across the street, I'm looking out my window and I see it. A brand new, beautiful mobile home that my neighbor lives in. These are nice homes and they're a great way. That's a very young couple. That's their starter home. It makes a lot of sense. But these are not structures that are built to hold massive aquariums. So if you're somebody that lives in a situation like that, you might have to stick with a certain size or smaller because the structure of your floor isn't going to hold a 150 gallon, even though that might be what you dream of. You might have to hold off on that until you get to your next one. But I agree with you. The other things that you said are certainly part of the equation when entertaining it. But you got to look at that floor first.
Yep. So in my brain, if we're talking about the best options, right, for most people, in my head, I don't go less than a 10 gallon. I think I set the lower limit, not saying that the 10 gallon is the best, but in my head, I'm setting the lower limit as a 10 gallon because this is an aquarium filled up. It's 100 pounds. Pretty much any floor is going to hold 100 pounds. Otherwise, sure, we got other problems besides our aquarium. And it's the first tank size where I think you can legitimately mix fish, right? When you're looking at like a 5 or a 7 gallon, it's like, yeah, I might be able to put more than one type of fish in here, but boy, I am super, super limited, right? Not that those tanks aren't valuable, not that it's not a great thing when you've got a 5 gallon with a betta, but I like that. I'm curious what you think. A 10 gallon for me is about the lower end in terms of volume.
Well, I agree for more reasons than that. For one, you have a lot more options with a 10 gallon, so I completely agree. But also, a larger body of water can foul up. It takes a lot longer to foul up something. Problems can happen faster the smaller the tank is. I am somebody who totally subscribes to the idea of the more water, the easier it is to care for. I've always found that to be true. I could go for a long time without touching my tanks that are all 240 or larger. That was not a flex. I was just saying that's what I keep. Yeah. And those tanks can go a long way. I'm not going to recommend to people, 240 gallon because you don't have to take care of it as much. But a 10 gallon tank will take twice as long to foul up the water as a 5 gallon will with the exact same circumstances in it. You have one beta in there versus one beta in a 5 gallon. You put 25 tetras in a 10 gallon, it's going to foul up faster than a 5 gallon with one beta. I'm just confusing people now. But yeah, I agree. We'll keep it. 10 gallon is the starting point. 5 gallon, you're limited to what you can put in there. Can't put a whole lot of plants in there. Just can't do a whole lot with it. It's great to put on your desk, but let's stick with 10 gallons and more.
And I think the cool thing about that is when we start with a 10 gallon aquarium, we're getting into the land of kits, and that can be a big time benefit. So now I'm thinking more of the beginner. I don't shy away from those kit tanks when someone is just getting into the hobby, where you're getting the light. Is it the greatest light ever? Nope. You're getting a filter. Is it the greatest filter ever? Nope. Could those filters run for 10 years? Trust me, I've had plenty of the Aquarium top fin filters where I'm like, these are the cheap filters, and holy cow, I keep pulling them out of a box when I need an emergency backup, and you fire those bad boys up after sitting dry for 6 months. Like, yeah, that thing is still working.
Yep.
Your heater, is that going to last 10 years? Probably not. That's the weak side of it all. But you're going to get this tank, 10 gallons. Like you said, volume is sufficient where you're not going to, the water quality issues are going to be a little bit more stable than those even smaller aquariums. You have done, as well as I have done, like stocking options for a 10 gallon. I'm sure they're really popular videos on your channel as they are on mine, where we take the time to go through and say, okay, here are some fish that you can keep together in a 10-gallon aquarium. And it's actually there's a pretty nice list of fish. And so if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of space and you've got a smaller piece of like a table or something like that that's sturdy, that can hold 100 pounds, you've got lots of options there. You usually don't need a dedicated stand. It can be a really solid choice.
Yeah, and I agree. I've with Lisa and I's boxes of water series. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble speaking because I'm watching the dumpster truck drive by as we're speaking. It's a long story. It's a behind the scenes story. But anyway, I'm looking out onto my property, and there's a lot of distractions out there. But I've gotten a lot of messages for the boxes of water series from people that are senior. I don't want to say old people because I'm one of those senior people that struggle to do aquarium maintenance on big tanks. You know, a 10-gallon tank, you can do a maintenance on a 10-gallon tank with a pitcher of water. You know, a pitcher, dunk it in there and do your thing. So easy to maintain. If you have a 10-gallon tank and you need to move it, even if you are somebody that's senior, it's not going to be hard for you to find somebody that you know that's capable, drain half the water out and carry 50 pounds from one place to another. It's not going to be that difficult. But you have a 75-gallon, you need to call a couple of people and, you know, call your grandkids or your nephews or something that have strong backs that can come and move that for you. And something that I've had to do before, I don't know if you've ever run into it, Jason, where you have that emergency situation having nothing to do with your aquariums, but your home, where there's this thing that needs to be accessed, but we can't access it because an aquarium's in the way. Having to move that out of the way in a, I don't want to say emergency, but in a time sensitive type of a situation, that can be very difficult the larger aquarium you get. So easier to maintain, and easier to maintain for people that are limited in what they're able to do, and easy to move if need be. We're fish keepers. We're always moving aquariums around. So anything that you can move around that's easier to move around is going to make your life a little easier. So yeah, 10 gallons. I mean, there's not too many people that can't use a 10-gallon for something.
Yeah. And I think when you get into the sweet spot, we're doubling that volume. You know, when we're looking at the best tanks of all time, for most people, that 20-gallon, I mean, that is one where you're legit in a situation where you've got the volume to really keep a very wide array of fish, right? And now we can talk about the advantages of the 20 long versus the 20 high, but either way, now you've got a tank that's 200 pounds, so it's about the size of a dude. So you still possibly can keep that on some sturdy furniture. Maybe you want to stand, but there's a possibility there with furniture. It doesn't take up a big, giant amount of space because the standard 20 is only 24 inches wide. So it's 2 feet wide and 12 inches, or 2 feet long, 12 inches wide, and I don't know, 20-ish or so inches tall. So it's not taking up a ton of space. You've just doubled your volume. So your point about being able to keep water parameters more stable, that's there. You can still find a kit with a standard 20.
Sure.
So if you're doing a 20, do you have a preference over the standard 20 or the 20 long?
I personally own and maintain, it's 10 feet away from me right now, a 20 high. I prefer the 20 high. I do like taller plants and stuff like that. So I understand the versatility of 20 longs. I think 20 longs have a place and they're great. In certain situations where you want to stack them on top of each other or something like that, the 20 long is great. But my personal preference is the 20 high. I just like that 24-inch footprint and a little more height. I think it's more suited for what I like to do.
That's interesting. I think at one point when we had both fish room sides up and running, we might have had, I don't remember exactly, maybe 8 standard 20s and probably 4, 6, maybe 10 or 12 20 longs, probably closer to 12, maybe even 14 20 longs at one point. And I actually prefer the 20 long, but there are some downsides to it. And the downside is there's, to the best of my knowledge, no 20 longs like kits for beginners where you can just get everything. So the entry point, the price point to get into that 20 long is going to be a little bit more expensive. It is the same length and width as a 29 gallon, so it's still really easy to find lids, lights, filters, all that kind of stuff. But I do like the dimensions of the 20 long more, just because fish use their horizontal swimming space more than they use vertical. But if you do like the taller plants, absolutely. That 20 long is only about 12 inches tall, so it is a
Right.
much shorter tank. The advantage there, if you are somebody, again, who's smaller in stature and you want that shorter tank that's a little bit easier to work on, the 20 longs are going to be a little bit easier in that respect. They can actually be a little bit more complicated to filter, right? Just because you do have that 30-inch long tank now, and you're taking up more space than a standard 20. And sometimes, depending on the filter that you pick, you might get dead spots on either side of your 20 long, where it's less likely to happen in the standard 20.
Yeah, I do. I see your point with the height restraint. I mean, like Lisa would probably pick the 20 long because she's 5'4". Your wife is 5'8", 5'9". She's much taller.
She's like almost 5'10".
Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
with her, it probably wouldn't be as big a deal. Lisa's
Yeah.
5'4", so she's a little munchkin, and the 20 longs would be perfect for her. But I agree. You wouldn't think that the extra 6 inches would make it that more difficult to filter, but to get that flow to go all the way across, unless you're one of those people that put your filter on the side. Some filters you can do that, internal canisters, stuff like that. Yeah, it's a lot easier to get that full circulation in the 24-inch footprint. I just, with the smaller tanks, I like that bigger frontal viewing window that's taller, and like the 29 is one of my all-time favorite tanks. I love the height of that. I do like the 30-inch in length. What are they, 12 inches deep, and then
Yeah, they're 30
22
by
tall?
12 and a half, and the 29 is, oh boy.
Like 18 inches high or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I really, really like that. So I do like that extra length, but when it's the 20 or 20 high or 20 long, I just prefer that bigger window. And I do want to mention, because you brought it up more than once, I have no affiliation with this company whatsoever, but I've been a supporter of this company for a long time because I like their products. If you are in the market for a kit tank, I have a personal preference towards the Marine Lands. I really like the Marine Land kits. The Aquarium is perfectly fine. If we're being honest with each other, they're all fine. They
Yeah.
really are. The Top Fins, the Imagitarium, they're all fine. They're all going to do the job, and they're great entry points to people coming in because most of the decisions are made for you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. People ask all the time in terms of the tanks, what's the highest quality? I think they make them all in the same factories. There's probably 2, maybe 3 factories at the most that make these aquariums. And you'll know because the dimensions will be exterior dimensions will be slightly different because the thickness of the top and bottom rims might be a little bit different. They might be off by a 1/4 inch in either direction. It gets a little annoying when you're trying to find glass lids and you're like, oh, I had glass lids from a top fin. I go to put it on my Marine Land and they're falling through. It's like, and it's literally like a 1/4 of an inch
Right.
difference. So, but for the most part, the glass thickness, the silicone that they use pretty much is going to be really similar. So if you've got a preference for Marine Land, people ask all the time, like, where did you get your tanks? Like, we've got some special hookups. I'm like, I went to the dollar per gallon sale like everybody else does, and they just seem to last. It's, yeah, I mean, I do think that the 20, when you're looking at, again, especially for beginners, there's a sweet spot there with that 20 gallon, whether you choose the 20 high or the 20 long based on your preference. That's the tank where you've got a lot of stocking options. You've got a nice volume, but it's not so unwieldy where, again, you're going to have to call 5 people to move the thing or take forever to maintain it. You don't need really large pieces of equipment like, oh, I need a 6-foot light or 2 3-foot lights, and I need these giant filters or a big canister filter or this 300-watt heater. So that makes it a lot less expensive too. So that 20 is nice. You mentioned the 29, and you said that's your favorite?
Well, no, I said one of my favorites. I
Okay.
I definitely love 29s.
Yeah. So, and that's interesting. So we're going to have a difference of opinion here. Woohoo!
Nice.
The 29 is actually my least favorite of all the standard size tanks. Yeah.
Okay.
So interestingly enough, when I recommend tank sizes to people, I say go 20 long. If you want something bigger, go directly to the 40 breeder. So I usually skip over the 29 because I'm not a, I personally, and again, this is a preference thing. I don't like the height as much, right? I find them to be far more cumbersome to work in because they're taller than the 20 standards. They're much taller than the 20 longs. I would actually rather have a 20 long and lose the 9 gallons of volume than a 29. Uh, and trust me, in the comments section, you are free to call me crazy. I understand that. I will accept that, knowing that I'm giving up a third of the volume just so I can have a tank where I like the proportions of the 20 long better, but could certainly understand the 29 being an attractive tank as well.
To me, it is, when you're gaining those extra 9 gallons from a 20, it's not like you go from being limited in the kind of fish you can keep to being able to keep all of them. No, it doesn't work that way. Your options, you maybe get a few more options with the 29, but I just think that larger, I keep calling it a window, the
Yeah,
viewing
it is.
panel
Mhm.
is much more substantial. It makes a much
It
bigger
is.
impact. And to me, when you walk into a room that has a 29-gallon aquarium in it, it is a much bigger deal than a 20. I love 20 gallons. We've got like 70 of them. I love 20-gallon tanks. But I just think that extra size, like the title says, size does matter. The extra size of that 29, I feel like it makes a huge impact. And you do get to move up to some of your slightly larger fish with the 29. I'm not telling you this hobby begins and ends with the 29-gallon tank for me. I'm just saying I really like that. And if I had a choice, I can only have one tank, and it's either a 20 high or a 29. I'm taking the 29. And that's, I love the 20s. I got a 20
Yeah.
right there, but I would take the 29.
I agree with you. If it was a standard 20 versus a 29, I'd probably go the 29 myself. But more so for me, the 20 longs. The other thing to consider, though, is once you get to the 29, now you're close to 300 pounds. And this is usually why I say this. At that point, you're really stretching your furniture's ability to safely hold,
Mm-hmm.
especially like, excuse me, newer furniture. You're really stretching your ability to safely hold that almost 300 pounds, where a lot of times a couple 100 pounds is fine, but you're adding a third, to the weight. And if you're going to have a stand, that's why at that point I'm like, man, I'm skipping the 29. If I got to put a stand in, not to mention the fact that 29 is still 30 inches long, right?
Oh, what the heck?
So our video just cut out. You're not going to know this. We know it because it happened to us. But I was talking about the 29-gallon and the fact that you're really starting to stretch your furniture's range in terms of what it can safely hold. And if you're going to go with a tank that you're going to need a stand, that's why I do. I just like going right to the 40 breeder at that point.
It's so funny that you say that because you talked about how you're at 20 gallons and you skip right over the 29s and go to 40s. I'm at 29 gallons and I skip right over 40s and go to 55s. That's just, I have never kept a 40 breeder. I'm not against them. I think they're really cool. I've never kept a 40 breeder. I've never kept a 60 breeder. It's always been either 29 or straight to 55 for me. But I mean, 40 breeder is great. You get that 36 inch. What is it? 36, 18, 18, something like
Yeah,
that.
36, 18 and a half by, I think it's like 16 or 17 high. And the fun fact about the 40 breeder, it's not actually 40 gallons. I think it's closer to 46 or 47 gallons. So volume wise, you're actually not that different from the 55. And this does crack me up because I'm skipping the 20, going to the 40. You're skipping the 40 going to the 50, 55. One of your favorites is the 29. And I would say, I'm going to ruin the surprise right now. The 40 breeder, if I could only pick one tank for myself and you told me I can only have one size tank the rest of my life, you can have as many as you want, but it can only be one. 40 breeder for me all day, every day, without even thinking. because I love the 3 foot length. I love that deep tank, right? So it's as deep, 18 and a half, as a 75 gallon, and it's not as tall. And so for me, I'm getting this perfect world of I have a tank that's deep enough and still tall enough where aquascapes look nice. I've got a lot of surface area, a lot of ground area for a lot of the cichlids that I like to keep. I can make a great community tank with this size tank being 3 feet long and 18 and a half inches deep. But I'm also not taking up 4 feet of space. If I want to double, triple stack those tanks and be a little silly, I can do that. They're still short enough. There is a significant downside, though. Do you know what it is? Besides the fact you just don't like them.
Well, no, it's not that I don't like them. Don't you put words in my mouth now. Don't
You're
you
a
put that
40
evil on me.
breederite. You're a 40 breederite. We all sensed it.
You're going to start
An
calling me all kinds
anti-40
of
breederite.
Oh, geez, you're going to start picketing outside my house. I know it.
Yep.
Can I guess? Because not
Sure
having
you can
any
guess.
experience with 40 breeders, I'm going to guess it's difficult to find lids for them. I don't know.
Oh,
Is that it?
you're crushing it today. It's difficult to find a lot of stuff for the 40 breeder. So yeah, lids. There, to the best of my knowledge, there isn't another tank with those dimensions, right? 36 by 18. It's the 40 breeder. So you have to go out, either do like the polycarbonate lids or try to find glass lids specifically for the 40 breeder. And now you've got to do the 3 foot light, which there's other tanks that are 3 feet, but not that many. And it's a deep tank. So now you've got a shorter tank that's also pretty wide. So that 3 foot light really does have to be a nicer light if you've got a planted tank. So filtration on a 40 breeder is one of those gray areas where it's like, man, you got a 3 foot tank. So either get a really big filter, which might create too much flow, or get two smaller filters to handle either side of the aquarium. And so for me, the 40 breeders, I've always got two sponge filters in those tanks, or I've got a sponge filter and a hang-on back, or two smaller hang-on backs. So yeah, all that can be a little frustrating. I'm not going to lie.
And this is your favorite tank. That's just
It
weird
is
to
my
me.
favorite. Yeah, because once you overcome that, once you've committed to the 40 breeder lifestyle, you're okay. You learn how to deal with those tricks. But here's a really cool thing about the 40 breeder. It doesn't have a center brace.
That's true.
So for people like me who have got to quarantine larger fish, trust me, when you're trying to catch fish out of there, that 55 gallon with that middle center brace absolutely stinks, along with many other things. But when you can just go through and scoop and not be impeded by that center brace, that's pretty darn cool. And like I said, I love it. It's shorter. I can easily double stack those things and not have to worry about it.
Well, we're just going to keep fighting here because you've done crossed the line now with talking about me, titling me with an ists and all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, it was an ite. It was an ite. Let's be
okay.
clear. You're an anti-40 breeder-ite. I would love to know how many people in the comments actually know what TV show that kind of references.
Don't
tell them. Don't tell them.
I'm not going to tell them because I don't know what it is, because I think I know. I'm pretty confident that I know.
I'll give you a hint. This is going to give it away. You're an anti-dentite.
Is it The Office?
No, you're pretty kind of close in the same realm.
I know I've heard that anti-dentite.
I cannot be around somebody. I can't be friends with somebody who's an anti-dentite.
That's Seinfeld.
That's Seinfeld. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was going to drive me crazy. Who played the dentist on Seinfeld?
I can picture the face. I don't know the name.
Only the star of the best television show that's ever been made in the history of television.
Oh, was that Breaking Bad guy?
Yep, Bryan Cranston.
Okay.
Yep.
Which I actually think that show was horrible, but we won't go there. We're just going to have all kinds of disagreements today.
Oh my goodness, how dare you. Now you've definitely crossed the line. You had a foot over it. Now you've run over the line. Your
choices suck, and your taste in TV shows are even worse.
I can't believe this friendship even exists. Okay, listen, I'm just going to throw more fuel on the fire because it seems to me like you were about to talk negatively about what I believe is one of the best aquarium sizes. And I'm going to be so mad at you if you do this, because I'm not even going to pay attention to your silly 40 breeder. I'm going to go straight up to the titan of entry level aquarium sizes. The size that all of the filter manufacturers make filters specifically sized for this tank, I'm talking about the 55, because
Worst tank in the world. Okay, keep
oh
going.
my god, Lisa, come and take over for me. I can't handle this guy anymore. No, I cannot disagree with you more. And you already spoiled it for yourself, so I'm going to spoil it again. The 55 is not the one that I'm going to tell everybody they should get, but it's very, very close. Anyway, I just made that more confusing than it needs to be. The 55, there's so many fish that you can get. Are you going to keep angels in a 40?
No. Well, I have, and you're right. No, I wouldn't. But I wouldn't keep it in a 55 either. Oh.
Oh, come on. This is how did we become podcast partners? No. I angelfish are one of those fish that so many people keep. I absolutely love them. We've got several of them in the fish house. I love them so much. They're one of my favorite fish. They're a huge statement fish, impact fish. This is not an episode about the angelfish, but I don't believe that it's appropriate to keep angels in anything smaller than a 55. I'm not telling you the 55 is perfect for them, but I'm saying that when you get to the 55, that's when you can graduate to the angels. And so many people do graduate to the angels. 55 gallons are kind of that mid-size, which you remember this too. You're the same age as me. You've been keeping fish longer than me. I can remember a day when if you had a 55 gallon tank, like you were legit. Like that was like, what? He's got a 55. Like that was a really big tank for our hobby. It's probably more like 125 now is the equivalent of that in today's fish keeping. But back then the 55 was kind of like the staple. And maybe that's why I'm such a big fan of them. The versatility is so much bigger as far as your options for fish. You can layer fish in them. You can have so many different varieties in there. Plants all over the place. Equipment is made specifically for that size tank. 55 is great. However, one of the downsides is, it's not a downside, but now you're getting to the size tank where you really need to go with a manufactured stand or one that you build out of 2x4s made specifically for the 55. There's no putting it on furniture and stuff like that. Go to the thrift store and buy a old dresser and put it on there. Will it hold? Yeah, but I wouldn't feel good about it. I think you need to have something more specific for that size tank, but this is where you can really take your hobby to the next level. I love 55 gallons and I don't care what you say about it. Whatever you say next means nothing to me.
So the 55 gallon is kind of like the bodybuilder who doesn't work legs. Like those little, he's got a big upper half and a skinny little lower half of his body. I'm kidding. I've had 55 gallons and you're absolutely right. The 55 to me, when I was working my way up the tank size, that was the first time I ever bought a tank and was like, this is big, right? There's just something about a 4 foot long tank that really, and that tall viewing panel, which you love so much, that really does. For those who have never had one and you've had the 20s and the 20 longs and the 29s or maybe even a 40 breeder, which isn't volume wise that much smaller, the 55 does appear to be a lot larger, but it comes with, in my opinion, a host of issues. Boy. Issue number one, you're taking up 4 feet of space now. And if I'm going to take up 4 feet of space, I am not using that 4 feet of space on a 55. I'll be using it on the next size tank that we talk about.
Okay.
2, and Joanna and I agree with this wholeheartedly. It is an extraordinarily difficult tank to properly aquascape because it's tall and skinny. And so you've got a 4 foot long, very tall, what is it, 21-ish, 22 inches tall.
22, yeah.
And only 12 and a half inches deep. So now you're looking at a tank that's no wider than a 20 long. And you're like, what in the heck am I supposed to do with this? And so it makes it appear as though from the front panel to the back of the glass, it is a skinny looking tank. So that creates a whole host of issues. It is a tall tank like we talked about. So now working in that tank is going to be, got to have longer arms. And if it's on a stand, for people who are shorter, a little footstool or something like that, a little step ladder. Lights have to be a lot stronger now if you've got to plant a tank because of the depth of that aquarium as well. you're guaranteed pretty much at this point, if you really want to have nice flow through, you're 2 filters, one on each side, whether it's 2 hang-on backs. Can you get away with one big one? Yeah, but you are absolutely going to have dead spots in some area of that tank. So it does have its issues. The other thing too that not enough people talk about, put a 55 on a stand on carpet and you will feel how unstable that tank is, because it is so narrow, so tall, so top heavy. I've gotten to the point where if someone tells me they've got a carpeted living room, do not put a 55 there. Just don't do it. I think you're risking it. That was probably, of everything that we had when this gallery was a fish room, the only stand, and I built them pretty much all of them. John, I know you built a ton of stands in your time. The only one that really was like, I'm not 100% comfortable about that was my double stacked 55-gallon stand. I was like, gosh, that's probably the least stable stand that we had in the fish room. And I actually wasn't too sad when I pulled those tanks out of here to build the gallery and got rid of that situation.
I can't disagree with you. I disagree with almost everything you said about 55s because I love them so much. But I cannot disagree with there's an anxiety to a tank like that is able to be toppled over if the circumstances are correct. And I had a circumstance like that when I was younger. I was probably 22-ish. I've never been a drinker. I've been drunk like twice in my life and hated it both times. I've never been a drinker, not even a sip of beer, because, ew, beer's gross. But anyway, there were a lot of people that I was friends with back then that would drink quite a bit. And when you grow up with a bunch of rednecks that like to drink Budweiser and they get rowdy when they're drinking, people fly around and they wrestle with each other and people get thrown around. And I had a scenario. I could probably claim I saved somebody's life. I was not drunk because that's not what I do. I'm not a drinker. But my friends were, and they were horsing around, and one of them fell into the tank. And I happened to be right there. I had a 55-gallon on a regular stand made for a 55-gallon, which is just waiting to be tipped over on carpet in my basement, which was a concrete floor, but it was in the basement. Or I had carpet on it, and they went into that tank and it started, I could see it, and I was right there. So I put both hands on it and stopped it. And it's not like I held all that weight. It was like, it started to move a little bit and I immediately grabbed it and stopped it. I don't know if it would have fallen over if I hadn't been there, but that would have been catastrophic if that happened. So yeah, I can't argue with you there. There is the chance that it could be toppled over. And what I would recommend to anybody, we've done this before, if you are going to get a 55-gallon tank and you're going to buy a stand from the pet store, get a stand for a 75-gallon and put that either in the middle or towards the back of the stand, because then you don't have to worry about it. The tall, skinny stands that are for 55s, they just seem like they're ready to be pulled over. I mean, it is, especially small kids. Yeah, the tank weighs 500 pounds, but once that momentum hits and that thing starts to fall, you just get out of the way, because I don't care if you're the bodybuilder with the skinny legs, you're not stopping that thing from going over. I don't know that I've ever heard a story of a 55-gallon flipping over or toppling over, but it just seems like if there was a tank that could do that, it would be the 55. But I don't care about that. I still love it. I love the 55-gallon. But I got to tell you an interesting story that has nothing to do with 55 gallons. When Lisa and I, we went and bought 9 20-gallon tanks for our plant room for the business. We went to Petco in Greenville, North Carolina, to get the 50% off sale, because it's actually cheaper than if I was to buy them through my distributor. And we're in there and I see this tank and I'm like, that's the coolest looking tank I've ever seen. What is that? It's 4 feet long. It looks like it's 16 or 18 inches deep, and it looks like a 40 breeder, but it's just a little extended. Like, what is this? It turned out to be a 60-gallon breeder. Now listen to me. I've been keeping fish since 1993. I never knew this aquarium size existed. I'd never seen it before. New. Are they new? Okay. Well, then yeah. I don't feel so bad about it. That is a
I mean, they're not
really
necessarily
cool
new
tank.
anymore, but yeah.
That's a really, really cool tank.
Yeah,
And
we've got one in the fish room right now.
do you?
Yeah, so the
That's
60
neat.
breeders came out about maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years at this point. Maybe
Okay.
maybe it's closer to 2 years. So it's the same dimensions as a 75. It's just shorter.
Yeah, really, really neat. I like that a lot. And I didn't realize it's the same footprint as a 75. That would make it easy for lids and
Hmm.
stuff like that and all that. But that's a really cool size. But we'll skip past that, just like we did the 40 breeders, because they're irrelevant and nobody cares about them. We'll go straight up to the 75
Yeah.
from the
And that's the
55.
reason why I say it. If I'm taking up 4 feet of space, I love the 75 gallon. It's about the same height as the 55. So you're not incurring a whole lot of extra maintenance in terms of like trying to reach down into the aquarium. Same length, but what you are getting is now you don't have that skinny 55. Now you've got that full 18 and a half inch depth, right? So,
Yep.
or width, I should say. So, and that makes a massive difference in terms of your ability to aquascape, your, in some ways, your ability to keep fish. I think a 75 is a much better option for a lot of your Mbuna cichlids. I still think it's a little small for peacocks. I think you still run into some issues there, but you do have additional options in that 75 because of that increase in the width of the tank. Still, like I said, still 4 feet. So if I'm picking at this point, I mean, that 75 gallon for me is right near the top. Now, again, you got a heavy tank at this point. You're looking at 750 to 750 pounds stand. Absolutely. There really isn't a question here anymore. And then you got to be committed, right? I mean, as we're talking about these larger tanks, the commitment level goes up in terms of the cost, in terms of the time, cost for equipment, cost for fish, stocking it. If you're going to plant it, any of the aquascaping stuff, you're going to need a lot more of it. So you are increasing costs and time as we go up in these sizes.
Oh, dramatically. I mean, I think a 75 gallon tank is like $300
Oh
for just
yeah.
the tank.
Yeah.
And then the stand's probably going to cost you about the same. And
Hmm.
by the time you're talking about big filters and all of that, this is the tank. Even though it's only 20 gallons bigger than a 55, when you get to the 75, I feel like this is when you get into the realm of the big aquarium. Like,
Yeah.
even though the front panel and the back panel of a 75 gallon is identical to the 55, it looks so much bigger in a room than a 55 does. That depth makes a huge, huge difference. And when somebody walks into a room that has a 75 gallon aquarium in it, it's a much more substantial reaction than the 55. Even though I love the 55s so much, this is your entrance into the world of big tanks. And your options for fish, like you said, are much more substantial with those. I People ask me all the time, because I've become known as kind of the Oscar guy. I've got one on my shirt. What is the absolute bare bones minimum you would not put an Oscar in anything smaller? I tell them reluctantly a 75. I've done it. I've kept an Oscar in a 75. I felt guilty doing it. The fish lived for a very, very long time, like 11 years. So, I guess it was okay. But I don't like an Oscar in a 75 gallon, but it's better than people putting them in anything smaller than that. But, there's obviously better options for your Oscars, but you do get into fish that can get some size to them that you can put
Yeah.
in the 75. The fancy goldfish like I have in mine. There's a lot of options that you can have for fish. But to just piggyback on what you said, everything gets more expansive, everything gets more expensive. And I meant to say both of those words separately, because everything's expanded. The filtration is bigger. The lighting, sometimes you might want to entertain the idea of going two lights, because it is 18 inches deep, front to back, and it's deeper. Everything's bigger with the 75. It's like putting an aquarium in Texas. Everything's bigger. So, everything's going to be more expensive, but this is your entryway into the big time. And I mean, to move up from that, I don't know how much time we need to spend moving up from that, because I don't know that for
Yeah.
somebody
The
coming in, I don't know that I would recommend anything bigger than that.
Yeah, the only other one that I think is even a remotely viable option, if you're going 6 feet, go 125. Super common, still really expensive. Stocking options at that point for most hobbyists, you're going to be able to stock pretty much anything you want outside of the monster fish and stuff like that. But you're pretty much most of the fish that you'd find at a pet store that are selling fish that are actually for hobbyists and not like here's your pond. Um, it's you've got all the options at that point, but it's a huge commitment, right? 6 foot tank, 1,300 pounds, costs a fortune when it comes to aquascaping, planting, filtration. It's hard to find reliable 6 foot lights. So usually you're doing 2 3 foot lights. And yeah, I think at that point for most people, the 125 is kind of like that dream tank. And so we're starting to get out of the realm of the common tanks that most people would probably consider.
Well, especially if we're doing this episode from the standpoint of the entry, like people coming into the hobby, which is not what we're really trying to do here. I mean, this is all about what is the optimal aquarium size, but this is where we get into, there are certain situations, like you said, where you have no choice. This is what you have to do. If you want to do the right thing, you want to keep Oscars. You have no idea how many emails. Yes, you do, because you're just as popular as I am on YouTube. You get the emails, I'm sure. This is the kind of fish I want to keep. What tank should I get? And for me, it's always Oscars. I want to do what you've done. I want to keep Oscars and bikers, but come on, I don't have enough room for a 360 gallon like you have. What would be the bare minimum? This is what I tell them. 125. I know I just said Oscar in a 75. I meant one Oscar in a 75. Begrudgingly, you could do that, but you want to do it right, it's where you're going to want to go to that 150 or that 125. And I think there shouldn't be the bigger cichlids and stuff shouldn't be in anything smaller than that.
Yeah.
And an argument could be made that a 6 foot tank is too small for bikers. I mean, they can get 3 feet long. So, but if you put them in a 125, you're doing better than what most people do. So,
Yeah.
so many Oscars I've seen in 29 gallons and 40 breeders and stuff like that. So you're doing better than most people. But I believe personally, the 125 is the most versatile sized aquarium in the entire hobby. And it is by far my favorite size, because you're almost limitless. You're not going to keep, the big monsters. Like, you can start young arowanas in them. Asian arowana, maybe you could keep in a 125 if you're lucky enough to be able to get them. But most of your cichlids, your South Central American cichlids, all of your African cichlids, you're going to be great in a 125. And so that's why I love it. You are larger than what most standard filters are made for. So you're going to be moving up to canister filters, which is great. Who doesn't love that except for Jason Adams? 125.
I don't mind them. They have their place. I'm running 5 behind me right here, but it's not ideal.
Well, I think it is ideal, but I think that's
Well,
the
I should
perfect
say
match.
maintenance-wise, it's not ideal. That's all I meant is, yeah, they're ideal in many other ways. But yeah, I agree with you. 125. I think the 125 ends. We mentioned the 10 gallon is the lower limit. I think the 125 is a reasonable upper limit. My personal favorite 6 foot tank is the 180, but at that point, we're getting into tanks that are not as easy to find. You're not going to find kits. You're not rolling into a Petco or PetSmart and be like, oh, there's the tank and stand ensemble, So the 125 is generally where it ends. They used to have a 4 foot 150 that I don't think they sell anymore, and that's not really a common tank anyway, but it certainly would not be anywhere near something I would recommend. In fact, I would strongly recommend against them for a number of reasons. But so you mentioned that you were going to tell us the tank or the tanks that you're like, okay, these are the ones.
So if somebody comes up to me and says, I have a situation here where I've got what, $1,000, whatever. Not even necessarily talking about price here, but I I understand that so many fish keepers start small and then they work their way up to big. I want to bypass all of that. I want to get a tank that I can start out this hobby in and I can keep for a very long time and I can grow in this hobby with this tank. What size should I get? My answer would be 75 gallon every single time. It's easy to find filtration for it. It's easy to find stands, you know, the lights, the lids, all the things that you need. Your options are not limitless, you know, but you have a lot more options of fish that you can put in a 75 gallon. I said it a couple of times. You can layer fish. You can have your bottom feeders and your mid levels and your upper. You can do all kinds of fun things. You can get bored of what you have, give all of your fish away and start all over again with something completely different and have all kinds of options for it. It's large enough to be able to do a lot of things without completely taking over a room. Anything larger than 75, you're basically, that is the dominant feature in the room. But a 75 gallon can fit nicely, you know, back there in the corner and not completely dominate the room, but yet give you so much fun and so many options for a very, very long time. Is it my favorite size tank? No, but it's great for that person that's, you don't want to go all in with the 125 or the 150. I personally like the 150, that the tall 150, not the 4-footer, but I think it's 72.
150, that's 24 inches tall or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's a taller. I've even seen one that's even taller than that, I think. But the 125, you know, you don't want to go that far because you're living in a 1,000 square foot 2-bedroom house. You know, you don't want to have something that dominant. The 75 can make that huge impact. It's not going to make you go broke. They're not cheap, but more water, easier to take care of, more versatile. There you go. You do need to get a couple friends to come over to help you move it, but but it's definitely one where you need that manufactured stand. I think you can get away with a 75 gallon on a tank that's not or on a floor that's not concrete, but will it fit in a mobile home? I don't know. But you know, you're not, once you get up to like that 125 level, you know, you need to have that on concrete. But yeah, 75, that would be my answer. Now you get to tell everybody how your answer would be 40 gallon.
Well, first of all, I mostly agree with you. So I would break it up into, again, we talked about this at the beginning, needs, right? Small aquarium for me all day at 20 long. If we're going to a medium-ish size, then yeah, the 40 breeder for me is absolutely the way I would go. And then if you're going to go larger, the 75. So it really just depends on the space that you have, the commitment level, the money that you have. But those three to me are like the bellwethers, at least. And I kind of back it up by what we've got in our fish room right now. I got two 125s, which would be my size for the large tanks, two 125s here, got two 75s. On the other side, I've got 440 breeders. They're all either 40 breeders, 20 long, 75s, 125s. And yeah, I've got a few standard 20s just because they fit nicely, because these low boys here, which that's a whole different story and not usually something I would recommend if it's your first tank. But yeah, I stick with those main sizes for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, there is no perfect size for each individual situation. Well, I guess there is, but there's no perfect size for each person because it does depend on your situation. But the interesting thing about this hobby is that you ask 10 people that have been keeping fish as long as we have, you're probably going to get 10 different answers as far as what the perfect size tank is. But to me, this is why one of the most important pieces of advice that I give to anybody that's just coming in, and I get those emails a lot, because new fish keepers that are just starting to research this hobby, they find my videos, they find your videos, and they email, what is the first decision that I should make? My answer is always the fish. I understand if you decide what you want is arapaima, well, that's going to be a little bit different, but you always decide the fish first, because then you know what size you need to get. Because if you want Oscars, you need to get that 125. And so, or do you have space for that? Do you have the budget for that? Or maybe if you like Tetras, most Tetras, then they can go with that 20 long. Or you're basically told what you should be looking at based on the fish. And my decision is figure that out before you even decide where the tank is going to go. Because if you find out that you want to get a 20 gallon, your options of where to put it are a lot more than if you get something that's 4 feet long. So decide the fish first, and then make all your other decisions from there. Otherwise, if you set up a 29 gallon that Jason hates, then you're going to go to the fish store and you're going to see all these fish that you can't keep because they need something bigger than a 29 gallon. Bypass all of that. Make the decision on the fish first.
Yep. So absolutely. Very good advice. Very good. So you mentioned at the beginning you had a story you wanted to tell.
I did. And I didn't know if that was going to be on this episode or
do you want to wait? Do you want to wait until next week to tell the story?
I just can't wait to tell it. I can't wait to tell it. So I want to tell it now. So, okay, listen. I did mention it in detail in the beginning of this, and I said it has to do with animals, but it doesn't have to do with fish. So about a year ago, Lisa and we found 2 dogs that ran onto our property. It's not uncommon around here. I'm surrounded by farmland. I'm surrounded by everybody has kennels in their backyards that have beagles in them, and there's dogs everywhere. So it's not uncommon for a dog to stumble on our property. These 2 dogs stumbled on our property a year ago. It was a larger mutt dog and then a smaller little running companion with the mutt dog that looked like it was something mixed with a Chihuahua. I don't know what it was. These dogs came a couple times. They ate the cat food that Lisa leaves out on the porch for outdoor cats, and then they would run off and do their thing, and then they went away. They disappeared. We didn't see them anymore until the following season. This last summer, they showed up again, and it was both of them, and they were running around, and this time they would actually come to us and they would let us pet them, and they were super friendly, and it was great. And I would give them treats, and because I'm a dog person, I would basically baby these dogs because I love dogs, and Lisa does that with cats, so I'm allowed to do it. So these 2 dogs came around a few times again, and then they disappeared again, and we didn't see them for like a month. Again, not uncommon where we live. But then about a week ago from the time we're recording this episode, the big dog showed up again without the little dog anymore, and was skin and bones. And when I say skin and bones, I mean like shockingly skin and bones. Like this was something that you would expect to see in the beginning of one of those Instagram reels that has Ed Sheeran's Perfect playing, and those kind of stories where you see this dog that's on the edge of death. That's what this dog looked like when she showed up. And this time it was almost as if she showed up asking for our help. Lisa and I both felt it. It was there. It was like she was coming to us because she needed help. Doesn't have her little running mate anymore. Not sure what happened to that one. So we decided we were going to start feeding this dog. And a couple days later, she would eat, and then she would go away and then come back. She came back every day, and we were feeding her. The 3rd time that she came back, she didn't want to leave. And Lisa and I were actually sitting out on our front porch. We have 2 rocking chairs and a bench chair, or a bench seat out there. The dog jumped up onto the bench and laid down between Lisa and I. And Lisa actually snapped a photo, which I will put up right now if you're watching this. Still very skinny dog, very unhealthy, very unhappy, but was almost like, okay, I'm home now. and she relaxed, and she was so sweet. I named her that night, which you know what that means. I named her that night, and I will reveal the name at the end of the story. Some people might make fun of me for this, but anyway, we started feeding this dog, and I started asking around at this point, who is this dog? Who does this belong to? Texting my neighbors. One of my neighbors told me, oh, it belongs to one of the guys that works on the farm around here. You should go and talk to him. Couldn't find this guy. I messaged who that person would be working for. They didn't know anything about it. This went on for like a week, me trying to find out who this dog belongs to. Meanwhile, Lisa and I put her in our barn and started feeding her a lot. And she started eating a lot. And after about a week of feeding her and having her named, and she's hanging out with us, never set foot off the property. Like, she's like, I'm here to stay. I finally did find out who the owner of this dog was. And I confronted the owner of this dog. And it was not pretty. It was not a pleasant conversation for him at all. And there was probably 10 people that were at this spot where I finally got, I don't want to say got my hands on this guy because it didn't come to that, but where I finally was able to talk to this guy and rip him a new one. Long story short, the end of the conversation, he was basically telling me I can have the dog. And so I walked away from that conversation with a fourth dog. Like, I got a new dog now. She's mine now, ours, me and Lisa's. And she has been an absolute joy. Now, we haven't integrated her with the rest of the family yet because we haven't been able to take her to the vet yet. This dog's never been to the vet a day in her life, according to the owner. She was hit by a car one time, and it did a little bit of damage to her paw. He took her to the vet just for that, which all they did was wrap it up. And so I lied when I said she's never been to the vet. She'd been to the vet that one time because she got some skin ripped off of her paw. Other than that, she's never had any shots. She's never had anything like that. So we don't want to mix her in with our other dogs because who knows what she might have. So as of recording this, I'm taking her to the vet the following Tuesday. We're recording this on a Thursday. And once she's checked out and in the clear, we will slowly integrate her into the family, into the household. Now, as far as the name goes, I don't think this is going to mean anything to you, Jason, because I don't think you've read these novels or seen the show. If you haven't, I would highly recommend it. Because this dog was a dog that would roam from house to house, like roam all over the place. There is a novel series about an old military agent named Jack Reacher that was this guy traveling from town to town. He was just like a drifter and would go from town to town and solve murders and all this kind of stuff. My other than Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, my favorite novel series and a great TV show that was made for Amazon Prime. So because she is a roamer and roams around, I named her not Jack because she's a girl. I named her Reacher. So this dog's name is now Reacher. I don't know what kind of a dog she is. Again, I'll put pictures up while we're talking. She is an absolute sweetheart. And as soon as Lisa and I are able to live stream again, I will introduce her on the KG Tropicals channel. She'll make an appearance on the live stream. She is awesome. And she is the first dog in 50 years that I've ever had that plays fetch. I've never had a dog play fetch with me. I own a beagle and she will not play fetch with me. So, and I want to send out a special thank you to a mutual friend of ours, Whips World. As soon as he heard about this dog, he sent us a bunch of stuff, including a gift card to buy dog food. He is a dog fanatic. And so he sent me a fetch ball and another toy for her. So very grateful for that. So yeah, new addition to the family to go with the 14 cats and 3 dogs already. And we're just developing our little farm here.
You just need the baby goats. That's it.
We did make the decision of where we're going to put the chicken facility on our property, so that's coming in the wintertime. We'll build it and then bring the chickens in the spring. So yeah, that's not going to be goats next, but it'll be chickens next.
Nice. Very cool. That's awesome. Well, everybody, you heard it here first. Chickens are coming, and soon you'll have the KG Farm Time channel where you can see all the farming that goes on in the land of KG Tropicals farming. So
before you know it, our channel's going to be like Paul Cafaro. I'm going to just have all these animals.
All the animals. I feed all my animals. That's going to be the videos every week, and it takes like 6 hours.
If I get the kind of views that Paul Cafaro gets, that'll be worth it.
It'll be worth it. It'll be worth it. So thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate you being here. Hope you enjoyed it. Would love to hear from you once again. Do you have a favorite aquarium size or one you would never get in a million years? Leave that in the comments section below. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Hope you have a great week.
You know what? This was my episode. I was supposed to say goodbye. You stole that from me. You're still
Sorry,
mad
man.
about the 29-gallon comment, aren't you?
Well, my feelings are hurt about the 40 breeder. We were just going to skip it.